Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today we're going to look at a new tier list just in time for the Black Friday sales. I know you're all patiently waiting for the uniform tier list and the best optional uniform tier list, again, for the upcoming Black Friday sales, the Black Friday 50% off uniforms. But first, we have to get through the tier list because all the other stuff is not going to make sense if the tier list is not here to support it. So let's dive right in. We have a lot to cover. A lot of characters got changed around, got new uniforms, got tier 4s, etc., got tier 3s, got nerfed, Hulk, and so we got to just cover it all here. If you are confused, right away at the beginning, PSA, if you are confused about why the tier list looks so different and you haven't seen it for a couple of months, you got to go back and watch the last one that I did. I know it's kind of annoying to tell you to go back and watch another video while you're watching a video. I apologize, but I just don't have time in this video to explain what I did in that video. So yeah, basically. Anyways, let's jump right into it. All of the bolded characters you will see here either got upgrades, they are new characters, or they got quote-unquote downgraded, or in rare cases replaced, which is rare in MFF, but it does happen. So let's get right into what the tier list is telling us here. So starting on the right side with the stuff that doesn't matter nearly as much, thankfully no one in the recent updates is out of the yellow categories from meta defining over to borderline, but Punisher finds himself already on the borderline because he is nigh useless. He's not useless, but he's very close to being useless. Not a good enough leadership to be relevant in that department, not any support passives, and then just not good enough in PvP or PvE to really even, you know, warrant being called, you know, meta-ish, right? It doesn't have nearly as much use as the other characters, and so he's relegated to this zone here, unfortunately. However, one cool thing that Punisher has is he has a different tier 3 skill. So go check that out in skill preview with different uniforms for a surprise. M'Baku, no surprise here, he's a tier 2, but they've clearly already decided that they want him to be a leadership slash support because he has a good leadership and he's got a support passive, and his artifact is also a support passive. So yeah, he's just a supporting machine, which should make him relevant forever, which is excellent. So don't sleep on him. Putting him here as a lead support doesn't mean he's bad. It just means that that's what his job is, and he does it very well. I may eventually rank the lead supports a little bit more carefully. If I had to rank M'Baku, even though he is not available for tier 3 or Transcendence, I would actually already put him in the top 6 or top 5 here, with Sif, Taskmaster, Colossus, Agent Venom, and Abomination in the combat class. Yes, like, while his leadership is not as good as Crescent's, right? It's half as good as Crescent's. All of the support passives make him a better support than Crescent. He's already available for ABX and ABL and World Boss Ultimate and other things. He's just not available for GBR yet and World Boss Legend yet. He may never be. He might be a Wenwu Katie type of situation, but his value is already there, and it already exceeds the likes of Crescent, Apocalypse, Hulkbuster, etc. So yeah, very good support. Ironheart, similarly, a very good support. I wouldn't say she's the best blast support just because she doesn't have the PvP value that Ebony Maw has, but I would say Ironheart is as good or better than Ancient One. It's tricky. It depends on who Ironheart is supporting, but if it's an elemental character, you'd want to go with Ancient One. If it's not an elemental character, I think Ironheart takes the cake because the blast leadership is very competitive, and then the increased damage to villains, or the increased damage to bosses, and the ignore dodge, very strong. And then the last new support that we got a lot of supports recently, is Morgan Le Fay down there at the bottom. Amazing for universal types. Obviously, it's a seasonal uniform, so you're going to have to wait until next Halloween 2023 to pick up that uniform again, but it is fantastic for PvE content. However, it basically did not make any dent at all in PvP. A lot of people were thinking she might be good for PvP as a support because of the debuff removal on her passive that applies to all universals, but I literally never saw a Morgan Le Fay in PvP, not even one. So unfortunately, Morgan is gone from that. So yeah, that's all she's good for. But that's still, being a great support for universals for PvE is nothing to is nothing to be sad about. That's still amazing. Just, we were a bit we overestimated her a little bit with the PvP stuff. All right, I moved my camera because I was blocking Loki. We gotta talk about Loki here. But in order to talk about Loki, we have to talk about Black Bolt. So Black Bolt is the other seasonal uniform that was paired along with Morgan Le Fay. And unlike all of the other male seasonal uniforms, Black Bolt is godly. And he actually got better when they recently buffed him to balance out the final damage and pierce interactions, which appear to have sort of a negative interaction with one another. So Black Bolt is now basically the best universal type in the game. He's not exactly as flexible as some other types because Inhumans are often shut out of high World Boss Legend stages, but the stages that he can do, he blitzes through them at tier 3 or at tier 4. He can do GBR at tier 4, which is insane. He can also help in GBR at tier 3, which is also insane. His power level is just off the charts. Super easy to play, proc friendly, gorgeous animations. Really the only thing holding him back from dominating even more is, like I said, the Inhumans race that he has. You know, it's not alien, it's not whatever. And the fact that his defense is a little bit shy of where you'd want it to be. So sometimes he can be a bit difficult to pilot, considering that he takes a lot of damage and he can get like one shot, two shot by higher stage bosses. But yeah, besides that, Black Bolt is an absolute menace to the game. The only game mode where Thor really competes with and actually beats Black Bolt is farming. But even then, it's quite close between the two of them because Black Bolt has such huge AoE, and that fourth skill, VPAT, allows him to progress in the map, in the dungeon, while he's farming, whereas Thor gets stuck using his fifth skill and sort of away from enemies. So it's sort of like a yin and yang type of thing for the way that their skills help them and affect them in farming game modes like Dispatch and Dimension Rifts. But yeah, Black Bolt is nutty. Black Bolt is absolutely nutty. So he's bringing back supports like Medusa, and of course he's also shining a light on how good Morgan Le Fay is. But because Black Bolt has come in and basically overtaken all of these villain categories, especially when it comes to ABX and ABL, you have a situation where Loki is almost not being used. Loki is now only being used on the one ABX day where you can't use Black Bolt, or one ABX day and one ABL day where you can't use them because you need to use alien villains. Again, he's not an alien. Black Bolt's not an alien. He's an Inhuman. So Loki still has value, don't get me wrong, but you can now use Black Bolt instead of Loki to cap in those ABX days where it's no restriction. He's actually easier to cap with. And then on top of that, Black Bolt is insanely valuable for ABL and other game modes, whereas Loki doesn't really have, like, he's just there by process of elimination. As soon as we get a better alien villain, Loki will have been replaced for that. And who knows, it might end up being Loki for Loki 2, but for now, he does lose a little bit of value. And to be honest, it's kind of high time that Loki loses some of that value. He was sort of sitting at the top for a little too long. But yeah, that covers the Universal class. That basically covers the Blast class as well, because we haven't gotten any Blasts recently. Now we're going to cover the Speed class, because you know what's coming next after that. We didn't have much. We just got Shuri. I know, just Shuri, but Shuri is amazing. She's basically a better version of Kamala Khan, because she does everything that Kamala does in a proc-friendly packaging, in a more proc-friendly packaging than Kamala, and she has a support passive that applies to all allies. So yeah, she's basically, yeah, it's literally just a better version of Kamala. In my opinion, I think the devs knew this when they designed Kamala. They knew that Shuri was going to overshadow her, and that's why they made Kamala a human as well, and they basically made them mirrors of each other because of the fact that they, you know, otherwise Kamala would just be a much worse version of Shuri, being locked out of a lot of content, being an Inhuman rather than a human. They didn't do that for Black Bolt. Obviously, they can't. You know, some people were saying, oh, it has to do with the show, but then why didn't they make her a mutant? It's a big mess. But yeah, basically, that's how you can understand it. Kamala is still very good, but Shuri is just a little bit better in every single way. Offensively, defensively, PvE, PvP, support, the whole 9 yards. And yeah, Shuri's just amazing. Such a good character. Probably the character that I would recommend new players invest in first, because her value is just never ending. Like, she'll be on your roster immediately as a DPS and a support, but then later on, as you build up better DPSs, she'll still be an amazing support. Like, it's a no-brainer, and you'll be able to use her as a support in PvE and PvP quite flexibly as you build up your roster. So yeah, I think Shuri is amazing. Doesn't take the cake. Obviously not as good as Black Widow because she's tier 4, but very, very good, and you know, very good investment, very high value. Last but not least, and that's why Kamala had to move out, because Shuri basically replaced her. Last but not least, we have the combat class. Literally the only class that has been getting love lately. We have, 6 characters highlighted this month for the tier list that are all combat. So we'll start with Hulk because he's the one that probably everyone's wondering about. He got bumped down. He got bumped down from meta defining to meta gods because of his nerf. Now, his nerf was needed because he was too strong, we know. However, the nerf has been, has caused a lot of confusion in the community. I want to make a separate video about this. Other content creators have already made separate videos about this, like Madanor, covering the fact that Hulk's tier 4 actually does work with low Pierce. So if you're watching this video and you're thinking, Hulk got nerfed, but it wasn't that bad, Alex, you may have low Pierce, and so you can actually still notice the difference when Hulk uses his tier 4 skill, but for players with high Pierce, you basically can't notice. Now, that's not really the answer players were hoping to hear, but it seems like it's the answer that the devs are going with. So rather than just raging against them endlessly, let's try and use Hulk for what he's good for. And to be honest, Hulk is still very good. He's still top 3 for PvP. And he still is basically the gatekeeper stopping weaker characters from joining PvP. Because if you cannot tank Hulk at all, you cannot participate. You either have to tank Hulk or you have to be able to kill him before he kills you, right? So because of that, he's still very, very strong. I put Captain America just under Hulk because although I feel like he is very versatile, he suffers from that jack of all trades, master of none syndrome. He's very good for PvE, even at level 70, level 80, tier 3, which is like Venom. He's good for PvP as well if you can build him for that. But then again, you have other options that are better. If you wanted to use Captain America, you could just use Venom or Namor if you wanted a hero or a villain, and you're going to get better production in PvE, right? In a lot of cases, or Moon Knight even, right? And then if you want to use Captain America in PvP, you could do that, definitely. Or you could use Hulk, or you could use Carnage, and in my opinion, you would get better performance. Now, the investment is going to be higher for those characters. Here's where it gets tricky. The investment is going to be higher for Carnage or Hulk for PvP. The investment for PvE is pretty similar between Captain America, Moon Knight, and Venom. Namor is the only more expensive one, but that's really the issue here, is that Captain America is not number 1 in any category, and unlike everybody else that I've mentioned, all these other tier 4 combats, Cap seems to struggle in ABX and ABL. So he doesn't even bring that additional value to the table, whereas all of the other ones that I've mentioned, they do bring that value. Even Hulk as the sort of rare combat villain, right? Hulk only has Carnage and Namor to compete with him in that category, and you can still get a good score in ABX and ABL with a PvP build on Hulk. So that's super duper valuable. Cannot say the same thing for Captain America, etc. So yeah, that's why I put Captain America here. I may be undervaluing him a little bit, but it's not just about value, it's also about who is at the top of the meta. And unfortunately, Cap does not find himself at the top of the pure meta, like the true meta. In terms of like the value or the versatility meta, yeah, Cap would be near the top for sure. But that's like not a real tier list. That's just like, stuff we're making up. So then we come to Venom and Namor. Venom actually shouldn't be bolded. He was at the top. However, I do think Namor has replaced him as the number 1 combat character in the game. And this is tricky because Namor doesn't have any PvP value at all, like even less than Venom and way less than Carnage. But Namor at tier 4 is just a different beast. And what's refreshing about Namor, unlike a lot of these other characters, is he performs very well in all content using a non-traditional CTP, a CTP of Judgment. Barring GBR, which is why I didn't give him the GBR tag. I don't think he does very well in GBR with a Judgment, but he can still do very well in ABX and ABL with a Judgment, which is extremely rare these days. Very few characters can do that. So I wanted to highlight that ability, which also still makes him very good for other PvE content like World Boss Ultimate and World Boss Legend. He's excellent for those game modes. He's pretty easy to play, although he, isn't very proc friendly in my opinion. And he has a decent combination of offense and defense. He's not as tanky as Hulk or Carnage with the artifact, but he's definitely a little bit tankier than Black Bolt. And he has a quirky buff removal on his second skill that appears to apply to bosses. So I'm still debating over whether I want to make a video on that or not because of stuff. But yeah, it is a very powerful effect when used at the right time. So that's essentially how the tier list shakes out. I think we're still due for a couple of surprises before the end of the year. So don't be surprised if this tier list ends up looking quite a bit different going into 2023. But yeah, keep it locked on the channel here for more breaking, content regarding Black Friday. Thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.